Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'll be reviewing Turning Red. Turning Red is the newest film from Pixar and it will be releasing this Friday on Disney+. And I have to say, I didn't see a lot of marketing about this movie. I didn't really know what to expect from it. I felt like it was really flying under the radar, but I was really pleasantly surprised. As you expect from Pixar, the animation is obviously phenomenal. It's top tier. They're, ahead of their class when it comes to putting out these animated films. One of the hallmarks of Pixar is that it can capture the attention of both children and adults, and I think that this film in particular does a really good job because it seems like it's marketing towards my generation, the ones that grew up in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, because this film does take place in the early 2000s, I believe 2002 to 2003, somewhere in there. And it follows the story of Mei Lin. She's a girl who is growing up and trying to, navigate what that is like to be, going through puberty, going through maturing at that young age and that impressionable time in their life. And it's really interesting because this movie obviously feels like what's happening to her is really a metaphor for growing up and changing into a woman. So in this story, you find out that her family has this long ancestry that links back to the red panda as the spirit animal of her family. It's kind of this overarching theme of this representative spirit that represents all her family, the fierceness. The women in the family have this curse, if you will, where they will transform into the red panda. And she doesn't know this, and it happens out of nowhere, and she's struggling to deal with going back and forth from being a little girl to being this giant beast. And it really, you can see right through that is a metaphor for something else, as you could probably figure out. And I think it's interesting how they decided to tackle that, because it's telling the story of puberty in a way that, kids can understand and kids can appreciate and enjoy, and it's still funny and quirky how they're dealing with everything. But as an adult, you can see through what it's trying to message. One of the places where I feel like this film really excels is the overall energy of the movie. It's very fast-paced. It's pretty funny. It has a lot of quirky, funny moments. It's a very lovable movie. All the characters are very likable, especially the main character. And I think the voice acting of all the cast works really well. They're very endearing, like I said. You're really rooting for them, and you're seeing this girl navigate her life changing. She's starting to have this interest in boys, and she's in that point in her life where kind of your friends become your family, and you feel like kind of that distance and kind of bridging that gap of being fully dependent on your family but wanting to be independent, wanting to have your own interests and hobbies. So I really think it tackles that premise really well. One of the interesting things about this movie is, like I said, it takes place in the early 2000s, so it's kind of replicating that boy band craze that a lot of girls and a lot of people had in the early 2000s. There's a band called Four Town that's kind of their version of like a Backstreet Boys or an NSYNC. So I really did like how they decided to do that. The music's really catchy. I saw that it was written by Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas. So it's really well done and it's really catchy. I've heard it on the radio recently. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one or two of those songs becomes like a sneak hit. I won't dive too much into spoilers of the film, but I will say that the end of the film is pretty satisfying. Like most Pixar films, it kind of wraps it up in a neat bow, telling a really good story about family, acceptance, growing up, and being able to bridge that gap, like I said, of being a child to becoming an adult. And I think this coming of age story from Pixar is one of their better ones. They've obviously done a lot in the past. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not doing anything absolutely incredible. But I think for what it's trying to do, specifically the story of a young girl, kind of blossoming into being a woman, I think it's really excellent how they decided to go about it. Really, I can only say the major knock of the movie as an adult man, that maybe some of the messages are lost on me as far as being a young girl navigating this. But that's my own, individual lens of this film. I think if you're a, woman or a young girl, it has great messaging. Like I said, it definitely exceeds what it's trying to do. But I would say the only thing is it's a little goofy. It's a little childish at times. But at the end of the day, it is a kid's movie. I think some people expect Pixar films to always be these really heavy-hitting, like extremely deep films. And this does have those elements. I'm not saying it doesn't. But it may not be, top tier, top 5 Pixar film. But I feel like it's definitely in the upper middle. It falls within the catalog of being another good Pixar movie. They always seem to have these hits. I know recently maybe people haven't been as onto them because of, being in theaters. A lot of them are streaming. But I really enjoyed Luca. I really enjoyed Soul. And I think this is right up there with those films. So if I were to rate Turning Red, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Like I said, it's not by any means a perfect movie, but I think the messaging that they're going for works really well. I think all the voice acting, the writing, and the overall aesthetic of the film works, but being in the early 2000s, I think it reaches kind of that generation, my generation, where we're now having kids and we're navigating a whole different area of how this happened to us way back in the early 2000s, and kind of those kids that were born then are now becoming adults. So it's really interesting how they decided to go about that. So those are my thoughts on Turning Red. Let me know what you thought about it when you check it out. If you've already seen it, let me know what you think. I'll be interested to see maybe how the general audiences feel about it, because like I said, it's not really being marketed that hard. And I think it's just going to pop up on Disney Plus, and people might just check it out because it's going to be spread across, the front page there. So I'll be interested to see how the people that stumble upon this feel about it. So again, thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. See you guys next time.